Hello and welcome back to Archetype Builds. This channel is where we talk about an archetype, usually a paragon or a stereotype from fantasy or fiction, and show you how to build it in your D&D character. But we haven't done that in a while because we're doing other videos. And today is part of my hopefully ongoing Archetype Builds Homebrew. This is where I talk about things that I have homebrewed for my games that hopefully you can go out and use for your games. And we're going to talk today about a pair of subclasses that I homebrewed. I had a game that was heavily revolving around Timora, the goddess of good fortune. I kind of looked at what I wanted was a political campaign where there was an attempted assassination, but the target of the assassination was just supernaturally lucky, just incredibly fortunate. And so they had to have plans on plans on plans, with the idea being that they have to muster a lot of resources, that even though they're trying to stay quiet, that signs are popping up, and so the party could find out about this plan. And then even if they thwarted one plan or a second plan, there would be all these other things at play that keep coming up that they need to deal with to prevent the assassination of this ruler. And I like that Timora, was a chaotic good kind of deity. So it's this benevolent force in the region, something the party would want to sign up with. And there's a thing about chaotic good characters that I think parties really resonate with. That chaos mirrors their own, and then it's just kind of like being friendly and generous and all that kind of stuff. So I wanted a campaign centered around a character that was heavily aligned with Timora. I ended up going with a demigod that is sort of like Timora's son, being like kind of lucking his way into being the emperor of this nation. I think I had a lot of fun with that. And then I, of course, wanted the Timoran church to be an important part of that world building. And so I was looking for cleric, like domains and paladin oaths that aligned with Timora, and I didn't really see anything that struck my fancy, and that is very strange to me because luck and chance, it's such a big part of D&D, right? You're rolling the dice and you're waiting to see what's going to come up, and there's these big swings of luck and good luck and bad luck, and it's so integral to the game mechanics as a whole that having this deific presence of surrounding good fortune and surrounding luck was such an opportunity to play with those mechanics. And so I got really invested in the idea, and I made two subclasses: the cleric Luck Domain and the paladin Oath of Fate. Now, I'm going to talk about the philosophy for each of these two classes, but I did want them to be very distinct, even though they were both of the same god, and I wanted them to play on what those classes were good at already. So maybe let's get into it. So the Luck Domain Cleric is all about avoiding bad outcomes. This is the person who just seems to be supernaturally lucky. Good things tend to happen to them. Bad things never seem to happen to them. I described Luck Clerics sort of wandering the kingdom, being at the right place at the right time by happenstance all of the time. Always coming across someone who had ordered more food than they needed to, always, kind of subsisting off of the good fortune of the land. I wanted them to have spells that aligned with that. So their first level abilities are centered around this idea of sort of luck and of avoiding bad outcomes. We have at first level Lucky Break. When you choose this domain at first level, you benefit from your opponent's bad luck. As a reaction, you can cause disadvantage on an attack roll directed at you. If the attack hits anyway, you cannot use this ability until you finish a long or short rest. So this kind of encapsulates what's up with the Luck Domain Cleric. I actually had, this is very much intended to be flavored as just a guy, just an ordinary guy walking around. The player is going to impose disadvantage on that roll. But the cleric, in their case, just lucks out. Maybe they see something on the ground and they bend down to pick it up and the sword slices above their head. Or, they like trip and, miss the mace or whatever it is. They are just always happening to be missing these bad outcomes. So Lucky Break is this ability you can use. It's almost like a shield spell, right? It's this class feature you use as a reaction in response to being attacked, but it just gives them a higher chance of missing you. And then we have this other part of the class, which is important to me, which is this almost like allergic reaction to bad luck. So if the enemy hits you anyway, it actually deactivates this ability. So you get lucky, you're on a roll, you're not getting hit, you're not getting hit, you're not getting hit, and then oops, you've activated your ability, you've caused disadvantage, right? But it's this thing where if you've caused disadvantage and they hit you anyway, it's like, man, you got so unlucky there that Timora like steps back and is like, I can't help you. So it's the kind of thing where you actually don't want to use this on particularly strong enemies. If that very powerful, dungeon boss takes aim at you and fires at you and they've got like a plus 13 to hit or something like that, you might benefit from just taking that hit. And so that was kind of part of the balance I wanted to add to this was Lucky Break is like when the commoners come out and they're like trying to attack you, or when you're in this fight against this very like imprecise enemy, that's when you want to be lucky breaking. So I like the idea that this is someone who sort of like has a certain amount of like immunity to these like lower level things, but still when the chips are down, when things are really serious, this cleric actually does have to pay attention and does have to focus. And there can be this spiraling effect of like, you got hit when you used your lucky break and now you don't have that tool available to you anymore and it like spirals downwards and downwards. So there is this danger here. The other ability I gave them at first level is Fortune Favors the Bold. It says, starting at first level, your trust in the power of fate gives you an edge when fighting breaks out. During the first round of combat, you have advantage on saving throws and attack rolls. So this idea is this kind of like, and I always love first round of combat abilities because it's like a passion of mine that like the first round of combat is the only round that always happens, So this is always relevant, and then maybe less so in these prolonged combats, but there is this idea of maybe the enemy gets the drop on you, it's an ambush, and your cleric, your Luck Domain Cleric, is very well adapted to ambushes. They are getting to impose disadvantage on those attack rolls. They have advantage on their own attack rolls when they, kind of like leap into the fray, and then saving throws or whatever as they're going on if you're getting poisoned or something like that. Or your enemy opens with like a synaptic static or something. The kind of thing that could be a real death spiral starter, something that happens in the first round of combat that everyone has to deal with. Your Luck Domain Cleric is much more suited to making that saving throw, overcoming it, and not starting off on a bad foot in that combat. So you can see again the model here. This is someone who's preternaturally lucky, and then, but if they fail, then there is that spiral, right? And if that combat drags out too long, the impact of this ability diminishes, right? And you're still just a guy. For spells, I liked the idea that that Luck Domain Clerics were as much balancing being lucky themselves with causing bad luck for others, especially enemies. So you can see that in their Lucky Break, right? They cause disadvantage on enemies' attack rolls. It's not necessarily that they are like super great in combat. It's that like they're not getting hit. The enemies are not able to touch them. So I did give them for first level Bane as one of their cleric spells. I also put on Chaos Bolt because you need more Chaos Bolt in your life. As a side note, the player who played a Luck Domain Cleric in my campaign genuinely, unironically, had the best rolls I've ever seen anyone roll. He took Chaos Bolt, and in a fight with 5 bad guys kind of lined up, he got 2 8s 3 times in a row on Chaos Bolt. That is the best possible outcome out of 64 possible outcomes. He got it 3 times in a row. And on the 4th one, it didn't split, but he still had pretty high damage on that one. He also rolled incredible on stats. He had like 2 18s and a 16 for his rolling for stats. He was on fire the whole campaign. And it made me, Thomas, like the person who was DMing the campaign, believe in Timora. Like I would pray to Timora each night before I went to bed because this player was truly blessed by the actual goddess of good luck. There's no other explanation for this. But yeah, so you got Chaos Bolt on there because it's got this luck mechanic built into it. I also gave them, at higher levels, Fortune's Favor, of course, Blur. Blur, obviously flavored, is just kind of like being, it's kind of this extension of that lucky break of like no one can seem to touch you. You're always like just at the right place at the right time to avoid the attack. And then higher up, Beacon of Hope. Enemies Abound, which I kind of recommended a flavoring as giving an enemy like terrible aim, like a curse of bad luck on them, and they just keep attacking their allies. And then Freedom of Movement, Confusion, Skill Empowerment, and then Control Wind. Towards later levels, those 7th and 9th level spells, I knew that the players weren't gonna get that high, so I didn't really. I wasn't really paying attention that much to the higher levels, and you'll see that when we get to the highest level features. For the Luck Domain Cleric's Reversal of Fortune, the way that I had homebrewed this ended up being too strong. So the way it originally was in reaction to either a natural 1 or a natural 20. So if anyone rolls a crit fail, crit success, this could come into play. I've reworded it to be more balanced. I think this is more appropriate for the class. So it says, Channel Divinity, starting at 2nd level, you can use your Channel Divinity to exert control over the luck of another. As a reaction to a roll of a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw from a creature you can see within 60 feet, you present your holy symbol and reach out to the gods to tip the scales. The roll is now treated as a 20. So, flipping a 1 into a 20 at a critical moment is huge. Really, really incredible. I'm going to talk about some of my design principles when it comes to this right now. And one of those principles I'm going to save for later. So there is this extra consideration that I'm not talking about right now. But I'm a huge fan. You'll see this throughout my homebrew series. Huge fan of reaction-based abilities. I think that reactions keep players engaged through that combat, through other people's turns. Is they're always looking for like, how can I play a role here? How can I jump in and help? Like, how can I make this thing work? And if it's not your turn, there can be a tendency to check out, and I had in that campaign 6 players, so that's 5 turns that are happening, plus all the enemies, so a lot going on in between turns. I wanted people to be engaged, so I love reaction abilities for that reason. I think that they are super, super helpful in keeping that combat feeling dynamic. So a lot of my homebrew abilities are reaction abilities. You have that Lucky Break with causing disadvantage, and now this Channel Divinity is a reaction as well. So what this is essentially the ability to take bad luck and turn it into overwhelming good luck, right? It's this infusion of luck into one pivotal moment, and that felt like the core of this class. I can tell you that there was no ability, all 6 players at that table were all in awe of this ability. Now, it used to say, as a reaction to a roll of a 1 or a 20, you could flip it to the opposite. So you could turn an enemy crit into a nat 1. I don't think this ended up being healthy. I don't think that was good for the game, because oftentimes there were a lot of enemies. Turning a 20 into a 1 came up really, really often in that context, and you didn't get the impression that you were like interacting with your allies in that way, right? You'd never want to turn your allies 20 into a 1. You always want to turn a 1 into a 20. So that's kind of where I wanted to reposition this cleric as a support cleric for the party. Although at one point they were, kind of more focused around like, how do I give bad luck to my enemies and ensure they always have bad luck? Yeah, this ability was the number one thing that caused people to jump up and scream, because I would look, at someone's eyes and it'd be like, the devil rolls a 20, natural 20. His crit is, and the cleric would just raise his fantasy. No, he didn't, right? With that kind of portend effect, right? No, he didn't. He rolled a 1. And, incredible. It's a very powerful ability if you use it strategically. For this case, right, a roll of 1 into a 20 is particularly useful when it combines with the Paladin. And you'll see that, and you'll see exactly what I'm saying. So, moving on to 6th level, this starts to get into what I think is my favorite part of the class. It was less resonant with the player, but as a game designer, I liked it so much I want to keep it in. I want to keep it unchanged for you at home. So, Lucky Shot. At 6th level, whenever you make an attack roll with disadvantage, you can use a bonus action to roll with advantage instead. You use this ability a number of times per day equal to your proficiency bonus. This obviously, if you are bold enough to take 6 levels of Cleric and then go a lot of Rogue, this obviously has some synergy with the Rogue sneak attack, but my intention here was more in terms of wanting to kind of like trust in Luck, trust in Tymora. You know, even you take the risky shot, right? You take that long distance archery shot. You go for an attack on or like a ranged attack on a prone enemy or something, and you just kind of hope it works out. And then a certain number of times per day, you use that bonus action that is a action economy resource. And then you go not only from disadvantage, but to advantage, right? So you've seriously increased the chances of success with that ability. I also loved the idea that, like, if you really wanted to make sure that something was working, if you needed to make that particular shot, you could find ways to give yourself disadvantage. So you could, for instance, the blinded condition, right, gives you disadvantage. So a Luck Cleric who really wants to make a particular attack work can close their eyes and just trust in Tymora, giving themselves disadvantage and then using Lucky Shot to give themselves advantage. And I really like that idea. I like the idea that they would even like seek out sources of disadvantage in order to improve their prowess in combat. I loved that. You can see that this cleric is a little more oriented at being in the fray, I would say. They are not a tank, right? They're very hard to hit, they're hard to pin down, but you look at Lucky Break is about, you know, when someone attacks you, Fortune Favors the Bowl gives you advantage on attack rolls, right, in that first round. And then now this Lucky Shot, right, is about your attack rolls. So I do think this is a cleric you probably grab that hammer and kind of wade into combat and start striking people. This was kind of flavored, right? My player who played this was just kind of a guy, and so he would often use improvised weapons. I imagine that they would be very fun builds with like a frying pan, like a reflavored hammer that's just some sort of like normal accoutrement. A battle breaks out and they run up and whack the the chimera or whatever with a frying pan or something. And that character archetype is now kind of realized and possible through this domain. I'm just a guy who gets pretty lucky, and I love that. At level 8, you're going to get the ability Serendipity. Moments of good fortune became even more fortuitous for you. Whenever you make an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw with advantage, you can roll an additional 3rd die and choose which of the 3 apply. So this is like the Elvish Accuracy ability, which said that like when you roll with advantage, you can roll with an additional die and have triple advantage. It's a blanket ability, so it's any time you roll with advantage. This, I think, most often comes up on ability checks because people can help you, so you're always getting advantage on ability checks, which means you're always rolling triple. Now your cleric is extremely good at all of the like miscellaneous things, you know, all the animal handling, the survival, that kind of stuff. This is a person who always finds themselves succeeding at these basic tasks, and is really like, I knew that the campaign wasn't going to go that much higher than 8th level, so this was kind of the capstone I wanted. This was like a cleric who had fully come into their own when it came to like rolling. Now you do still need those sources of advantage, right? So you still do need to find ways to take advantage of opportunities, and then they just work out for you. Especially when it comes to saving throws, I would say advantage on saving throws is pretty rare, and there's no class features here that are going to give you that. Advantage on attack rolls happens, right? If one of your friends has knocked someone prone, you're going to be especially likely to hit them, and that's great. But remember that 6th level ability is, if you have disadvantage, you can flip it to advantage. So now we're doubling down on that effect. You are seeking out sources of disadvantage, using that bonus action, and then rolling with triple advantage on the attack. So by closing your eyes and just trusting in Tymora, you can almost guarantee a hit. Yeah, getting that triple advantage is such a high chance of success there. And so I love, and it's still proficiency bonus times per day, right? At 8th level here, we're only talking about 3. You know, next level, 9th level, you're going to go to 4. It's still 4 times per day that you're giving yourself this advantage and then turning that into success, at least on attack rolls. And again, it doesn't really come up with saving throws that often. So we're really talking about someone who's amazing at ability checks kind of all the time, and someone who can, in the right moments, get the hit that they need to get, right? Important to remember here that a cleric isn't a particularly strong damaging melee class, right? We are not taking, you know, if this ability was on a rogue, for instance, that would be ridiculous. On a paladin, it would be ridiculous. On any class, really, that has much more combat maneuverability, fighters or barbarians, I think this is overpowered. On a cleric, I think it brings you up to the point where, like, you might be able to use this strategically. And that was also an important part of being a luck cleric, was like, I wanted the player to have something to do, right? A lot of these things are just about, like, you've got a higher chance of rolling a high number on the dice, and that's fun. But as a player, you might go like, okay, well, I'm only using, you know, a D8 hammer or a D6 hammer or something, you know. Why would I need that to hit? Like, why would I need that to be, you know, a strike? So you might go after the caster and just, like, make sure that you're forcing their concentration on something, right? You might go after some other combat objective, and, like, if you need to, like, break down a door or something, right? You make sure that your hit strikes in just the right place. It's that kind of thing, or if you have, like, a heavily shielded enemy, and you know that you can go in and you can, like, get through a break in the armor and strike them. That's the luck cleric, you know? Hey guys, so I was editing this video and the second half of the film was corrupted. This is why I like filming in these sweatshirts, is because I can easily just kind of put the sweatshirt back on and recreate the outfit for that video. But the time of day is completely different, and I got a haircut since then, so I just figured I would get it out of the way and say this is almost a week after I filmed that first section. But let's dive back into the features of the Luck Cleric. So I knew that my players were only going up to a certain level, so these leader level features, I kind of had a little fun with them, but I also feel that that's a good approach for D&D. If you're playing high level D&D, you want crazy out there features. You want to feel like that level investment was worthwhile, and the jump for Cleric is from 8th level to 17th level. So I went ahead and just threw a crazy one in here. Jackpot. Starting at 17th level, your luck never seems to run out. When you make a saving throw, you can continue rolling up to your wisdom modifier number of dice and take the highest value. If you still fail the saving throw, you must wait 24 hours before using this again. So we have a return of this bad luck allergy, right? If you still fail even despite all of this, you get locked out of this feature for 24 hours. It's this fun penalty, but come on. You are a 17th level cleric. You've got a +5 in wisdom. We all know that you do. You're rolling up to 5 dice and choosing the highest one. Now, I don't know if I can quite do the math, obviously, because it's going to depend on the saving throw that you're making. But let's say you need a 15 or higher on the die against some big boss monster saving throw. You have an overwhelming chance of making that save, right? It's significant chance of making your saves every time with Jackpot. This is obviously, you know, extremely helpful, extremely good, but keep in mind this is saving throws, right? This is only if the boss does stuff. Oftentimes bosses are doing like mass saving throws, right? If you think like a fireball that everyone makes a dex save, or a breath weapon or something like that. There are often these like very potent single target like mind controls with the wisdom saves or something like that. But you were already the cleric, right? So you weren't probably going to lose those. Maybe the abomination does some sort of synaptic static effect, brain blast, and you wanted to make that saving throw. You're going to make your saves. So that's great. But again, that is about keeping you in the fight, in control of your own actions, able to continue doing cleric stuff, right? So I don't think that that's an obtuse feature for 17th level. If you find that to be an overwhelming choice, you can always change it from being turned off by failing a save to just only being able to do that like once per short rest or something like that. Let's talk about the Oath of Fate Paladin. I think between the two, I'm happier with my Luck Domain game design, but the Oath of Fate I think is going to be more popular with people who generally watch this channel. So the Oath of Fate is all about this belief in determinism. So if the Luck Cleric is sort of like praying to a goddess of good fortune, saying like, oh, like, she who brings good luck, please bring good luck to me. The Oath of Fate is sort of saying, if there's a goddess of fortune, of good fortune or bad fortune or whatever, then the gods are deciding how things play out, right? Some force out there in the world has already determined how events are going to go, and I pledge myself to those forces. I trust in their vision for the future, and let me be a weapon in the arsenal of those deities. There is an inherent paradox here, because it's like, if those deities have already determined how things are going to go, then why would they need a paladin of fate? And I think the answer is that gods act through mortals, right? And this is very, very common in the D&D world. When gods have a problem, they send mortals to go deal with it. And so there's this idea that like gods don't need to recruit these paladins. Gods have in effect like made circumstances such that that paladin would be receptive to their will, and maybe even gives them a little bit of power that will help them get to where they need to be. It's very good for a D&D campaign because there is a sort of like built-in DM mechanic of like, if you're being railroaded, the Oath of Fate Paladin is so happy. The Oath of Fate Paladin is like, yes, railroad me to exactly where I need to be so that I can smite the boss and save the world, you know? So meta-narratively, I think it's a great subclass for playing D&D. The tenets of this oath are humility. Whether in glory or defeat, be humble, as it is by the will of the fates. Bravery. Never fear to act, for the results of all actions are within fate's plan. Hope. The arc of fate bends towards goodness. Never falter in your belief of a brighter future. Doesn't that just sound like a fun paladin to roleplay? So for your oath spells, you are going to get protection from good and evil, bless, fortune's favor, of course, enhance ability, bestow curse, blink, divination, aura of purity, commune, and Steelwind Strike. Admittedly, Steelwind Strike, I like the spell. I thought it would be fun to put on a spell list. But you can see that where the Luck Domain got Bane, which is unusual for clerics, the Paladin gets the Bless. The Paladin also gets Blink, which I think is this fun, like, randomness effect, right? Almost it's their answer to the cleric's Blur, because the Paladin is like biding their time, they're in the ethereal plane, they can't be hit, and then they appear, and that is their time to take action, right? There's a lot about this class that is themed around waiting for the right chance to strike. The big deal with this class, the biggest deal, is the channel divinities again. I have a personal favor for making those subclass specific abilities to the class be their defining characteristic. I don't know why, it's just something that gets into my head in design. It's like, what is a paladin subclass? And it's like, sure, there's a couple of features, there's an aura, right? But it's about the channel divinities. Those define the subclass for me. And so we have first channel divinity, Lucky Blade. As an action, you bless the weapon you are holding to deal devastating damage when you find a weak point. For the next minute, whenever you score a critical hit with the weapon, roll triple the weapon's damage die instead of double. So, kind of like a brutal critical effect, but you enchant your blade to have that effect. This is going to be very much in line with like the Oath of Devotion, where you kind of like bless your weapon to be magical and to have that +1/+1. But this is like, I am going to have a crit fishing sword. And this is in fact a very crit fishing class. Now, because paladins do not get multiple uses of their channel divinity, I felt comfortable putting another channel divinity that also had to do with critical hits in the subclass, because they're going to have to choose what style they want to play. I think particularly for long, drawn-out combats or combats against many different enemies, the Lucky Blade is by far the better Channel Divinity. However, I can tell you that it is not the most tempting one, as they are also going to get Fate's Reckoning. As a reaction, after you make an attack roll, you can replace all d20 rolls you make for the rest of this turn with the same number. So, what does that mean? Your paladin rolls to attack. They roll a 19. They add their modifiers, that's a 25 to hit. The DM says, that hits. You have the opportunity as that paladin to say, all right, I know that that was good enough. I'm going to keep that number. I'm going to use a Channel Divinity. And now every time I need to make a roll, I'm just going to say I got a 19. And that means every attack I roll is going to be a 25, which means every attack is going to hit. And I'm going to blow that limited resource on making sure this turn goes through. Of course, that's not actually when they're going to do that. They're going to do that when they get a 20. And they're going to say, okay, my next attack this turn is going to be a 20 as well. If they have some shenanigans, obviously a multi-class into fighter is a common idea here. You're putting that investment into fighter. You're getting that action surge. So I don't think it's terribly overpowered because you also have to make sure you get that nat 20 on the right attack. If you get it on the second attack in a turn, even if you have action surge, is that what you want to do? Like, you already didn't get it for the first attack of the turn. Do you want to blow your Channel Divinity on just 2 more crits that turn? It's up to you, right? You have that choice. But what this class really does is they sit and they wait and they wait and they wait for that one turn where they get a crit on their first attack. And then they unleash their powers. This is, in my opinion, balanced in the sense that most combats you want to front load your damage. To be specific, you want to kill enemies as soon as possible so that they stop doing things. They stop attacking, they stop helping allies, they stop casting spells, whatever. So if you're waiting until the 5th round of combat to do this sudden burst surge of damage, one, there is a very high chance that the enemies are already heavily damaged and don't need that much damage to be taken out. 2, that you spent the whole combat doing less than, maybe even less than baseline, right? Waiting for this opportunity. And as a result, maybe the combat wouldn't have needed to go to 5 rounds if you had just ponied up and used some smite slots on the first round or so. So I think it's balanced mechanically. I had an experience in my campaign where one of my players built specifically around this feature. They said, listen, if nothing else, in this campaign, at some point, I am going to get a critical hit on the first attack of my turn, and then I am going to go, however many levels of Echo Knight Fighter so that I can get Action Surge and Unleash Incarnation for 6 total attacks, and then smite on all of them with the spell slots that I have. And it just so happens that he got that opportunity against a single target boss monster on the first round of combat. I think the odds of this are incredibly low. They are incredibly low. However, with some other bonuses and some other magic items and stuff like that, doing very, very well on his smites, he did get almost 500 damage in the first round of combat, completely obliterated the boss in a single turn, and this epic encounter was absolutely destroyed by the Oath of Fate. So there is some danger here. The odds of that happening are incredibly low, and when it does happen, everyone will love it. This is one of the most memorable fights of the campaign, and it lasted 15 minutes. Most of that was him rolling dice, because he refused to use an online dice tracker, and the whole party got involved. He was just rolling d8s out on the board, and people were took different set quadrants of the table and were counting up the dice that he had rolled. It was a whole thing. I promise you, even if you as a DM get completely shafted by this ability, it is an exciting, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for your players. So Fate's Reckoning, very tempting channel divinity option for this class. It might look scary, it kind of is scary. I think that it is balanced. For 7th level, I wanted to give this feeling of helping your party, but also increasing your own capabilities. And the main thing here, of course, is that paladins are waiting on that 20. It was suggested that, instead of Echo Knight, what if this player had gone, champion fighter to get that bonus of 19 or 20? And I liked that idea because obviously getting a crit more often is going to be very, very helpful for this class. I ended up putting that in the aura. So we get Aura of Fortune. When you or a friendly creature within 30 feet make an attack roll, the result is considered a crit on a hit of a 19 or a 20. And allies within this range cannot suffer critical damage from enemies. I think this is a very strong aura. I think maybe if I were going to run this again, I would change it to 10 feet instead of 30 feet. I think that's reasonable and fair. You're still just getting your melee pals. Positioning is going to matter a lot more for something like that. But also keep in mind, this heavily relies on people mostly making attack rolls, right? If you're got a lot of spellcasters in the party, this might not actually be as helpful as you might think. And allies can't suffer critical damage, right? That extra damage from enemies when they score critical hits, which, sure, is really nifty, but is really more of a fringe benefit, right? That doesn't happen that often. So I think this is a solid ability. The biggest application, of course, is that it's you as well. So you also get a crit on a 19 or a 20, which means you also can trigger double damage die, or if you're using your Channel Divinity, triple damage die on those crits. You now have a 10% instead of a 5% chance of getting a crit on the first turn in combat, which allows you to use your Fate's Reckoning. So this is highly synergistic with your own abilities. I think that the benefit to your allies is nice when you can get it, but is mitigated, right? Note as well here the synergy with the Luck Cleric's Channel Divinity. Luck Cleric's Channel Divinity says when someone gets a 1, you can swap it to a 20. Now, if you're a 7th level Oath of Fate Paladin with a Luck Cleric in the party, you have a 15% chance of a crit because it's on a 20, on a 19, or on a 1. And then your cleric uses their ability, and then you can use your ability, and you've got this like synergistic cascade which results in a big burst turn. This is, I think, a very fun feature of how these two can work well together. This paladin is always waiting for a crit, and the cleric has this ability that allows them to generate a crit, right? That's, I think, very good thematically for how these two interplay. Notice also the Luck Cleric is all about bad luck prevention, right? It's all about, like, avoiding bad outcomes, canceling out disadvantage, canceling out natural ones, all this kind of stuff. And then the Paladin is all about capitalizing on good luck, right? When you get good luck, you can use that to push you forward to advance your goals in the campaign. At 15th level is beyond when I knew any player would take this class. So I also put kind of a crazy ability here. I said Cascading Success. When you succeed on an ability check or a saving throw, you may add your charisma modifier to the next ability check or saving throw you make within 1 hour of the first. This idea of just every success contributes to the next success and so on, right? Obviously, you make a saving throw and you fail it despite all the bonuses, then this ability is not going to trigger on the next one, and it's even harder for you to get back. But it is this, in keeping with the theme of having success push you forward. Very similar to the Luck Cleric's late level ability, it helps out a lot with saving throws. Paladins were already adding their charisma to saving throws because of their 6th level aura, so this is like doubling it. It also, I think, for a character that is heavily focused around melee damage and dealing melee damage and crit fishing and that kind of thing, I think it is kind of cool to flip it up at the end and say, like, oh, let's reward that charisma a little bit more. If you have invested in charisma in your paladin, this is gonna be a big benefit now. You can imagine if you've maxed out your charisma by 15th level, which actually I don't think is easy to do. I mean, paladins want their strength up, they want their constitution up. Maybe you're even multiclassing for this, so you've got other priorities. If you've maximized your charisma, yes, that is a plus 10 to saving throws. Total, right? From your aura and then from this cascading success if you succeeded on a previous one, which is really high. And it means you'll probably succeed on the next saving throw, which means you'll probably succeed on the next one, which means you'll probably succeed on the next one, which is all fine and good, right? That it's a high-level character. You're resistant to stuff. And what is a paladin subclass without a crazy OP 20th level feature? In this case, we are looking at, as an action, you can take on an otherworldly level of skill for 1 minute. You gain a number of natural 20s equal to twice your charisma modifier. During the duration of this effect, when you make an attack roll, skill check, or saving throw, you can choose to replace the result with one of your natural 20s. The effect ends if you use up to your pool of successes or the duration elapses. And then once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Yeah, I maybe don't need to have used the term natural 20s. I mean, that's like a common term in the D&D community, nat 20, that kind of thing. Probably could have just said 20s. So obviously the design principle here is twice your charisma modifier. Let's say that's 10. So that's 1 per round. So obviously, you know, you get about like a crit per round if you want to crit. You can certainly use Fate's Reckoning off the first one and get that burst turn, and then each turn afterwards you can kind of fill with crits and smites. You just kind of burn all of your resources in a Nova Fury of crazy damage. Or, I don't know, maybe you're in a vitally important skill challenge. You're in a gladiatorial arena, you need to like grapple some people, you know, just 20, 20, 20. Like, you can make sure to absolutely always do that. It's just a great OP ability. I also am a big fan of, yeah, I kind of hate passive abilities. It's one of those things, you know, it happens. The Paladin's Aura is one of those ones, it's just going to be passive. That's kind of the design principle of the whole thing. But it's fun when you get this, like, you can kind of like hold the pool of D20s and be like, all right, I'm going to use one. I'm going to use one. You know, you're making these strategic decisions about where you want to use that nat 20. And that is like obviously manifested as like fate is in your favor, right? You are fated to win that particular battle or that particular skill challenge or whatever. And it's just cool. It's a cool feature. So that's the Oath of Fate Paladin. I really liked these two subclasses. I enjoyed that my players did want to play them. I think that they are powerful, but I think they are more powerful in the sense that they create awesome moments at the table, and they are the types of characters that your party wants to add. They are excited. They want the Oath of Fate Paladin in there for those big burst turns, and for that aura. They want the Luck Cleric in there doing their thing, using their channel divinity to reverse luck. This is the kind of character that people are excited to have. Join them and play with them. So I really like the design here. I hope you guys also like the design. Feel free to pick it up and use it. If you're a patron of my Patreon, these have already been available to you for 5 days. I put the class features up a while ago. I've noticed I have started getting a couple of patrons, and so I'm going to start more actively putting content on there just for patrons. As you all know, when I do these archetype build videos, I put the character sheets up so that you can play that character at your table. There's going to be other goodies going on the Patreon, so check it out.